Hello, this is Recovery Diaries in Depth. I'm your host, Gabe Nathan. Thanks so much for joining us. We're very happy to have you here. We are so delighted to have on our show as our guest today, Brian Marshall. He is an award-winning journalist, over 30 years for newspapers in Texas and Michigan. He lives with bipolar disorder and depression, and he has written 2 essays for Recovery Diaries, one about his experience with ECT, which is electroconvulsive therapy, and the other, which you will read today, about his decades-long therapeutic relationship with his therapist. Each week, we'll bring you a Recovery Diaries contributor, folks who have shared their mental health journey with us through essay or video format. We want to see where they are on their mental health journey since initially being published on our website. Our goal is to continue supporting our diverse community by having conversations here on our podcast to follow up and see what has shifted, what has changed, and what new things have emerged. We're so happy to have you along for this journey. We want to remind you to follow our show for new and back episodes at recoverydiaries.org. There, like the podcast, you'll find stories of mental health, empowerment, and change. You can also sign up for our mailing list there so you never miss a new podcast episode, essay, or film. And you can find this podcast pretty much anywhere you get your podcasts. We appreciate your comments and feedback about our show. It helps us improve, make changes, and grow. And of course, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Brian Marshall, welcome to Recovery Diaries in Depth. It is so lovely to have you here with us.
Thank you. It's good to be here and to talk to you.
So I just want to peel back the curtain for a little bit and let our listeners know that we had some technical difficulties. We're starting a full 34 minutes late than we had been scheduled to. And I just want to say that as someone who lives with generalized anxiety disorder, it's thrown me a bit off kilter. So I'm struggling to kind of get back in the zone and just be here in the present moment with you and be mindful that, as the saying goes, shit happens and it's okay. But that's kind of the internal monologue that's going on in my head at the moment. So that's how I am. How are you at this moment, Brian?
I'm well. Thank you. Things are going well and no major complaints. I still have the the ups and downs occasionally, but I've learned some coping mechanisms, and I have a good support group, so I'm pretty well.
That's wonderful. I'm really glad to hear it. And, a lot of people talk about life in terms of ups and downs, but you're someone who lives with bipolar disorder. And so the phrase ups and downs can be a little different for someone living with that mental health challenge. Can you talk a little bit about what that phrase means for you?
Well, I would say probably for the last 20 years ago, I really haven't had any manic episodes, so it's mostly dealing with the depression side of it. And I've been on a pretty even keel. When it does crop up, I kind of lose motivation, energy. I sleep too much. Pretty much the typical, factors that people deal with when they're depressed. But I have found that I snap out of it quicker. I have no qualms about medication and, working with my psychiatrist to adjust it as needed. And therapy obviously is a great help. But it's just the main thing for me is, I believe, not panicking. I have my psychiatrist has kind of a dramatic case of bipolar where, it can switch overnight. I can wake up, I can be having a spell of feeling fine for months actually. And I can wake up and it's almost like, the chemicals have switched, and I just feel that, that overwhelming feeling of depression. And so the key is to not panic when that comes on, and to use my tools to deal with it.
Has that been an issue for you in the past, that panic, like, oh my God, here it is again, and I'm sliding down this hole into this deep depression? And how have you been able to manage that?
Like I said, it's I in the past would normally just kind of wallow in it and keep to myself, not open up. It's very hard for me sometimes to push myself to reach out, not only to the professionals in my life, but to friends. I have a couple of friends I can definitely confide in, but I keep it inward, and it just kind of builds on itself and makes it even worse. But I've learned, I just simply can't do that. And also writing is an outlet. The therapist I was with for many, many years, decades actually, said, I was a journalist. I'm retired now. I still
Hmm.
freelance. I've written a couple of books, but writing for me is a big outlet, therapy in itself. And she always said, whatever it is, write a note to somebody, journal, but just the fingers on the keys for me is an outlet. If I don't feel like reaching out immediately to somebody to talk to, I will try to put it into words, and that has also helped.
I love that you've already brought up Claire, who's was your therapist for many, many years, several decades. And we're definitely going to be talking more about her. And she's really, your relationship with her is the subject of the essay that you're going to read for us, that was published on Recovery Diaries a couple years ago. So I'm really looking forward to that. But there's so many things I want to ask you. Like, I have questions about writing, as someone who also lives with mental health challenges and who loves writing. I have questions about that. Um, I guess I'll start there. So you've talked about writing as a helpful outlet and a tool, and I know that you do freelance writing about animals. Is that correct?
Yes, I write for a magazine called Animal Wellness.
Hmm. So
I'm a,
here's my question: does the writing have to be related to your mental health for it to be therapeutic, for it to be an outlet, or something that's helpful to you, or can it be writing about anything, just the simple act of writing that you find helpful?
yes, I would say it's any kind of writing. Journaling about my feelings and what I'm going through is definitely a a key method. But no, it's just that creative process. I mean, when I write, it's almost like it's not coming from my brain and through my hands to the keyboard. It's coming from somewhere else. I don't know how to explain it, but it's just such an outlet. It's such a, for so long, for my whole professional career, I wrote every day, sometimes several stories a
Yeah,
day, in the newspaper business. So it's just it's been a part of my life, like I said. And yeah, just the act, it can be anything. Just that creative process, and just the letting go. Yeah, it doesn't have to be about mental health, although that certainly does help as well.
that's wonderful. I'm so glad that you have that outlet, and it's something that I mean, you're obviously good at it, award-winning journalist, and something that you've done for decades now. But that it's also helpful to you no matter what the subject matter is. And I, you were talking also earlier about how when you're feeling depressed, it can be difficult to open up. And I was thinking of a couple things related to that. And one of the things I was thinking about is that here at Recovery Diaries, we get all kinds of analytics and information about who's coming to the website and who's reading the essays, and of course, who's submitting the essays and who's getting published on the site. And it's overwhelmingly women. That's who's, we're predominantly getting submissions from female writers. That's who's getting published. And so many of the site visitors are women. And I remember when I first got you've written 2 essays for us. When I first got your first essay, every time I get an essay from a man opening up about their mental health, I'm almost like a dog and I can feel my tail wiggling a little bit because it's so rare. And when you were talking about how difficult it is to open up, I was wondering if you think that that's like a male thing, that's part of what makes it hard for you. All of the stereotypes and the tropes around men and opening up about mental health. Do you think that that contributes to that reluctance in you?
I think that is part of it. I think in our society, men are taught or raised to be, strong and be able to handle things on their own. And yes, I definitely think it is. I, I happen to just have the personality too, though, or I think, I'm definitely not a type A personality, real outgoing and just able to, freely express how I feel. But yes, I do think that is part of it for sure.
I'm going to connect another dot. Your dad was a cop, right?
Right.
And a cop a long time ago. Um, in an era where those kind of beliefs were even more deeply entrenched, those beliefs about men and manhood and like suck it up buttercup and stiff upper lip and that kind of thing. What kind of guy was he?
Oh, he was a great guy. He was the type of person my friends used to say, "Wow, I wish my dad was like yours." Just how do I describe him? Just warm and great sense of humor and just accepting of everybody. He was my baseball coach in Little League, and the kids just loved him. He wasn't all about, winning at all costs. He would make sure every kid on the team played in every game. Some of these coaches were just out to win at all costs, and some kids would sit on the bench forever. But so the players and the parents loved him for that. Just giving of himself, and as a cop, he was like that. He wasn't in it, he wasn't the macho kind of cop, was in it to carry a gun and to be the forceful, this is a lie, you can do it my way, whatever.
Hmm.
He would listen to people. He was reasonable, and but also, one on one, he did have trouble expressing his emotions, so it was hard for me to open up to him. I would more often go to my mother. But yeah, he was just a great guy. I can't say enough about. I was so lucky to have both of them.
Yeah, that's so wonderful. And he was an integral part in you getting help, correct?
He actually was, for sure. It was. Would you like me to talk about that now, or wait till I read it in
Right,
the
just
essay?
share a little bit about it, and yeah, we'll get to it in the essay too.
Sure. He he met a woman by chance. In order for my mom, there were 4 kids in the family, and back then, more often than not, the mother did stay home, be a full-time mother, not work outside of the home. And to enable that to happen, he took on side jobs. And one of them was painting. homes, and he happened to be painting the home of a woman, and he noticed that there were kids that would come and go on their bikes, even, and um, to her home. And he asked one day, you know, why are these kids coming to see you? And she said, well, I'm a therapist and I work with them. And um, as I will tell you in that say, I had just come home not that long ago before that. Um, and I was depressed. I was back living at home. And he asked her, would you see my son? And she said, of course. And that led to 3 decades of working with this wonderful person who, um, changed my life and was there for me and um, taught me the tools, got me to open up. And so, yeah, it was by chance, but, I totally believe some things are meant to happen. And that's one of them for sure.
Yeah, it's hard to argue against that when there's this just a totally random and yet life-changing encounter. And I love that it was your father that really made that happen. And it's what a lifelong gift that he was able to give to you. Perhaps unknowingly, maybe it was, well, Brian needs a little help. Let's see if this works. But how could he have known it would have blossomed into this, decades long therapeutic relationship? It's really extraordinary.
Yeah, it really is looking back on it. And like I said, I really think it was right place at the right time. And um, he talked later about it was difficult for him. Like I said, he was, um, not silent, but he was the strong. I was going to say strong, silent type of person. But for him to approach her and ask her, if she would see me, he said that was very difficult for him. So yeah, I was. For sure, it was very fortuitous for me.
I can imagine, I have two children and they're 13, they're twins. And um, I sometimes think back to when I was a kid and I was struggling with my mental health. And I approached my mother one day, I think I was 10, and I asked her if I could talk to someone. And the response was, oh, Gabriel, there's nothing wrong with you. And there very clearly was. Um, and I, my mother's still living, my father's still living, and I think about that a lot. And I think about that young boy and what it took for him to approach his mother to ask for help and it being denied. And I, for a long time, was very angry at her. Um, I didn't get help until I was in college and I could go get it myself. But I think about, could my life have been very different if I had gotten help earlier and if she had responded differently? And why did she respond like that? And what the fuck was wrong with her? You know? But I think about what it must be like for a parent to know that their child is struggling, and there's so many different ways to react to that and so many different things that a parent carries from their own childhood that can inform how they respond to that and react to that. And I wonder if my mother was scared, if my mother felt ashamed, that, you know, her, she must have done something wrong for me to not be okay as a child, and that getting me help would be admitting to that, basically, that this was, quote, her fault, which of course isn't true. But I wonder if some of those feelings like shame or guilt or fear were barriers to my getting help earlier. And then when I think about your experience with your father, emotions that he must have been struggling with related to you not being well. But then being able to overcome those and saying, okay, I feel maybe this way about Brian, and maybe I feel responsible or guilty or scared, or whatever, but I'm going to put that aside and do what's right. Um, I'm just so glad he was able to do that.
Oh, of course, so am I. And I think in my case, it was obvious I was struggling. I didn't want to leave the house. I was so depressed. So, um, yeah, I don't think it was a case where there's any gray area really, or any reason to hesitate um, to try to get me help.
It is so part of the reason that we do this show, Brian, is the vast majority of our guests are people from our Recovery Diaries community. People who have written essays for us in the past, people who've been in our films that we make, and we wait a few years to then bring people on the show to check in with them and see how they're doing now, because an essay is what it is. It's a snapshot in time. Same as a film. You make the film in 2016, and then you put it out there, and then life happens to people. And so, I'm very curious to hear about how you're doing now, what your day-to-day experience is, how you're doing with your mental health recovery now. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, doing much better. Like I said, the depression is inevitable. It comes no matter what's going on in my life. Things could be going great, but I got, like I said, I can feel it. Sometimes it's overnight, but I have learned not to panic. That's still a huge hurdle. But I will immediately, I have one friend in particular who I talk to often. I've actually known since I was in college. We actually dated and, of course, lost track of each other for many, many years. And I just kind of looked her up, found her on the internet, and this was probably 6, 7 years ago. And we connected. We had a great relationship then. She's very, she's had a lot of life experiences herself and is very in tune with me, knows my whole history. So that's like the first step I will take. I will reach out to her. I will, I won't hesitate. And then usually she'll still have to convince me to reach out to my therapist and or doctor. But so I just believe my coping techniques have grown and have gotten better and allowed me to deal with it when it does come on. Now, reaching out doesn't snap me out of the depression.
Sure.
Will stay with me for a while, but because I'm able to reach out, it won't reach the depths that it used to. From the time my first onset of depression was when I was 19, and it was just horrible. I didn't know what was happening to me. And then through my 30s and 40s, probably, from 19 through my 30s and 40s, probably hospitalized 6 or 7 times. But in the last 15, 20 years, I haven't been. I believe that's because, I've been able to get over that stigma of I have to be strong, I have to deal with this, by myself. And like I said before, I would just wallow in it and would get worse. So, yeah, just reaching out to her, and I also have a great family that are aware of everything I've been through. My one sister in particular I can talk to. And then, like I said, that will prompt me, lead me to reach out to the professionals in my life. So, yeah, as far as that goes, just in a much better place. There's nothing I can do. I've, accepted that to stop the chemical changes that, will inevitably lead to depression, but it's how I deal with it that has made the difference and
Yeah.
allowed me to, live a much better day-to-day life. So that's the gist of it, just from me reaching out.
Yeah. And it's wonderful that you have those people in your life that you're able to do that with and that you feel safe and comfortable and confident to do that, to be able to reach out. Again, knowing that it doesn't cure anything, but it helps give you support and relief and release and validation. It's just so, so important. And, you were talking about the making the connections to the professionals in your life, but I know that you have been experiencing some issues with, quote, big system healthcare, and some frustrations there. And I would love you to just talk about that a little bit if you're comfortable doing that.
Sure. Um, yes, I'm still in the midst of that. My psychiatrist, actually, I was with a psychiatrist who was wonderful too for about 25 years, and he retired almost the same time that my therapist did. I call them the dream team because he was just fantastic as well. And so I found another psychiatrist, and uh, we worked pretty well together. And he retired um, about 5 years ago, I would say. And I found another one that did not go as well. It went well for a while, did not go as well. So I decided to change just fairly recently, a few months back, and um, I I made an appointment and I went, believing I was going to see the psychiatrist, and turned out that the first appointment was called an intake, where I sat down and spoke to the person, and it wasn't just filling out forms; it was fairly detailed about my history. And it
Mhm.
was an hour-long session. I thought, okay, well, that's great. I'll see the psychiatrist next time. Made an appointment. Now I'm talking a couple more weeks went by. The next appointment was with, and I wasn't told this up front, that it was a several layered system before I actually saw a psychiatrist. The next appointment was with a caseworker, of all things, which um, I didn't need. A caseworker, as even she said, was, to make sure I had shelter, I had food. So I met
Right.
with her and then made another appointment. And um, that was a month away. And it's still a couple of weeks away from that. And this time I said, okay, I've got to get an understanding of what the system's like and what's going on, what the next step is. So I reached out and I discovered that my next appointment is with the psychiatrist, but they call it a psych evaluation. It's almost like I have to prove that I have a
Yeah.
mental illness. And so in the meantime, I've had to rely on my primary physician to prescribe my psych medications, which she has done, but she's been somewhat hesitant, especially when she had to do it for a second time. And I'm actually going to have to reach out to her for a third time, since this next appointment um, will not involve refilling my psych medication. So it's been very frustrating.
Yeah.
Um, and I decided yesterday, I'm actually considering foregoing um, that system and having my primary, which she has mentioned in the past that she would do, fill my psych medication, since, now you see a psychiatrist, it's not therapy. It's called medication review. You see
Management.
them.
Right.
for 5-10 minutes. So I can go without that if I have to. I can rely on my therapist for, my my everyday situation and problems. So it's been very frustrating. Um, I'm not the only person obviously going through this because that's the way they're set up. So it's frustrating.
Well, you're getting nothing but empathy here. And that's the way I've been doing it for years, is having my GP prescribe me my antidepressant and anti-anxiety medication because of precisely these issues. And many general practitioners are very reluctant to do this. They do not want to get involved with psych meds. They really are uncomfortable about it. So many psych meds carry that black uh, label warning about suicide because counterintuitively, a lot of psychiatric medications, carry that risk of increasing suicidal ideation. And so they don't want to touch it. And you're lucky in that respect that you have a GP who's willing to do it. I am as well. That mine is like, look, you've been stable on this medication for so long. I feel comfortable just prescribing it for you as long as you're still in therapy, which of course I am, which of course you are. But it's when I think about these issues going on in managed care, the immense level of frustration, and I mean, I'll even call it sabotage, because you're stable, you're on a medication or medications that are clearly working for you, and simply because your practitioner retires or moves or closes their practice or whatever it is, all of a sudden that stability that you've built up is jeopardized. And who's jeopardizing it? Our mental health professionals. Um, and the reason, it's simply because they want to cover their own asses. So they've put all these barriers in place and all these protective layers for themselves, um, which are incredibly frustrating and often dangerous, I think, for patients. So it's really a shame that you and so many others are going through that. And I guess the last thing I want to say about it is that living with mental illness is really hard. Um, I mean, it's an obvious statement, but then when these obstacles are put in front of you, it's making things even harder than they have to be for people who are already having a hard time.
Oh, absolutely. And you're absolutely right. The system, I'm not saying, there aren't exceptions. Obviously, there are still psychiatrists who will see you on the first visit, but it's getting fewer and far between, I think. And also, insurance companies come into play because
Sure.
my insurance company did a great job of locating some psychiatrists that I could reach out to. There were only a handful. And this is the one I did reach out to, and it's been, like I said, frustrating, and strongly considering, as you have done, just having my primary physician prescribe my medications because of that reason.
Yeah. Well, the frustrations that you're experiencing now with these clinicians are totally warranted. And I guess now would be a good time to move to a time when you were better supported and managed care, and you know um, the big health system wasn't a part of your life, and you were receiving much more direct and empathic care. So let's turn our attention. Let's go in the Wayback Machine for your essay. It's called Decades Long Relationship with Therapist, Truly a Gift by Brian Marshall, and we are ready for it when you are.
After a sudden crushing depression, I discovered by fate, I will forever believe, a person that would provide guidance, sincere caring, and a unique connection that would help shape my life for 30 years. That person was a psychotherapist. Yes, a deft provider of that personal one-on-one relationship that fosters, ideally, an atmosphere of sharing innermost thoughts and emotions and of facing roadblocks in the aim for clarity and happiness. Finding such a person, of course, can be difficult, and the right connection is always vital to success. Many try therapy with one or more professionals before giving up, frustrated that the give and take necessary for enlightenment is lacking. I was fortunate to enjoy a most unique and rewarding experience. I found the perfect therapeutic partner merely by chance. And this is what we had discussed earlier. But after a brief bout of depression upon graduating from high school, I had gone 5 years, quote, in remission from any sort of depression, as I thoroughly enjoyed college and 3 years of being welcomed into a wonderful group of coworkers and friends in Texas. I am sure now that my bipolar disorder was simply taking time off. I was not on medication, not seeing a therapist, and just enjoying life. I am also sure that my relapse was triggered by situational factors. I gave up a job I loved, sports writing, because my girlfriend lived 2 hours away. I took a job selling furniture, which I loathed every morning as I got ready to go to the store. I became engaged to Stacy after a year, when I realized that Texans, because of pride and love of their wonderful state, rarely leave Texas. Reality hits. I was and am very close to my family, who reside many states away in Michigan. I would only see them on occasion the rest of my days if I dove into my new life in the Southwest. Those two factors, selling out professionally and foregoing the wealth of happiness forged over a lifetime, resulted in a deep depression and a hospital stay. I quickly had a moment of clarity. I had to go home. Stacy and I didn't actually break up. I was ill and was only going to get better surrounded by family. She understood and stayed by my side. I called my father, my hero always, and I told him that I needed to come home. An immediate sense of relief followed when he replied, "Okay, when do you want me to come?" My father flew to Texas ASAP. Actually, it was the next day. We were to drive the 24 hours to Michigan. We did so in 2 days, and nary a word was said. My father was a strong type who kept his emotions in check. I felt safe and secure sitting next to him, but feelings of embarrassment, failure, and fear kept me from discussing my feelings, and of course, the depression that I was feeling. Once back in the bedroom in which I grew up, I wallowed in anguish, totally withdrawn from people in the world. No direction, no motivation, and way too much restless sleep. Then came my introduction to Claire Allen. My father was a police officer, not one of the macho, quote, "look, I've got a gun" cops, but one who cared about people and often was utilized in domestic strife situations. My friends loved him. He was big on humor, but didn't reveal his emotions. He held jobs on the side. He was painting the home of a woman when he noticed a steady stream of bike riding youngsters dropping by, spending a spell inside, then pedaling away. With his troubled son at home, my father built up the courage to ask the woman about the kids. Yet she told him that she was a psychotherapist that worked with the kids at the behest of their parents. My father explained that his son was very depressed and asked whether she would see him. Of course, just have him call and we'll set up a meeting, Miss Allen said. My father told me years later that asking for help was one of the most difficult conversations he'd ever had. Agreeing to go to therapy, I soon discovered that this woman had a spirit and positive aura that awakened me, albeit slowly. I returned weekly at first, and while there were some quiet sessions, I was able to get to a place where I could truly begin to address the real issues and emotions that had rendered me emotionally frozen. Claire Allen, a heavily educated psychologist, had been helping clients find healing direction and hope for many years. She moved from a busy office setting to hold sessions from her home in a tree-lined, cozy area in Michigan. What would proceed over the next 30 years would be an incredible journey of self-inspection, learned coping techniques, and unearthing confidence and self-esteem that had been whittled away by my own perceived failings. It got to the point where Miss Allen could read my face as I entered the room. What's happened? Or glad to see you're feeling better. I'd plunk down into a chair and we would go to work. Oh, the usual things, family, my current state of mind. She would offer instant recognition to whatever plight may have emerged, able to cut through pretense because of our valued chemistry. She helped me stop agonizing over what others thought of me. Instead, she reminded me of the many people in my life who respected and loved me. We role played, we examined what if scenarios, and I learned to avoid harmful triggers. Mostly, though, it was those 45 minutes in which our growing therapist client relationship blossomed. There were a handful of hospitalizations over the years when the chemicals in my brain shifted, bringing on severe depression. Always, however, there was my trusted ally to steady the ship, slow me down, and get me to dig deep. She showed me how the past shaped the present, but that the only thing that mattered was what I would do to make the present and future better. She had a database into my mind without needing a file. Miss Allen would meet some of my family members she knew so well as portrayed in our sessions. No one in my life went without examination in those sessions. If only they knew. She actually attended some of my children's milestones and was sought out by more than one family member during trying times. Miss Allen semi-retired when I was in my mid-50s, about 10 years ago. It had been a couple of years since I checked in with her. I was going through a rough time and felt I needed to reach out. In a 5-minute conversation, she gave me orders that I heard often through the years. Write, she said. You must write. Journal. Or even if it's a note to someone, write a note to me. As a journalist, writing was more than a profession. It was therapeutic for me. And so I did. I wrote her, thanking her for being there for me through all my life's trials and joys, for forming a bond that to this day prompts me to ask, what would Claire say when I am met with the latest of life's challenges? And I wrote this. I hope it inspires others to at least consider finding help when strife is ripe.
Thank you so much for reading that piece. It is a delight and very, very heartwarming. I think that so many people are scared of therapy, and there's the statistic that NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, puts out a lot on social media. And it says that the average length of time between onset of mental health symptoms to the person actually seeking help is 11 years.
Wow.
That's an astonishing length of time between knowing there's something going on and actually getting help. And I think there's so many reasons why people wait that long. But I think one of them is that people are scared of therapy and therapists, and they have these archaic or problematic beliefs about what therapy is going to be like, or they see things on television or film that are not accurate or are like horror stories or um, just give the wrong impression. And I think that your piece is such a wonderful antidote um, to that, because it really shows what is possible, and just this really um, beautiful depiction of this helpful, hopeful relationship. So thank you for sharing that on our publication.
Oh, absolutely. And, um, I found OC87 just searching around the internet, and I was so taken with the essays and people who opened up, and that's what prompted me to send my essay to you. Um, I still read the essays, and every one I read, I gain a new insight. It seems like there's so many people with so many different real life issues, and I was so glad that you accepted mine. And um, yeah, and I believe also, there's that stigma when, I'm not crazy. I don't need a
Yeah.
therapist. Well, yeah, you know, I just think everybody at some point can use somebody to talk to. And it doesn't have to be a therapist. It can be a friend, but, therapists are trained, uh, they do what they do for a reason. And, um, you know, to find one that you're compatible with. I don't mean to go off here on a
No, not
tangent,
at
but
all.
after Miss Allen retired, I had a hard time. I I saw a couple therapists, and I just didn't feel like there was that connection. I probably held them to too high of a standard after what I had experienced. But um, and then finally, I found one who we have things in common. We start almost every session talking about our love of the Detroit professional
Mhm.
sports teams, and we just kind of go from there. Um, so, yeah, like you said, I think there are so many reasons, and it's a shame because I know firsthand, and listening to you, firsthand what that give and take can do for you. So yeah, I wish more people would reach out when they're feeling that these hurdles in their life are so hard to.
And so much harder to overcome and deal with alone. And I think that's the real crux here, is that you don't have to do it alone. Um, there are trained professionals out there who can be helpful, and some of them aren't, to be very honest. And some of them might be helpful to someone, but not to someone else. It might just not be um, the right connection, but you can try again. And I'm on my 15th year with my therapist, so I'm very much in your boat. I hit it out of the park with my first one. Um, Not counting the therapist I saw at the college counseling center, but my first one in like the real quote adult world. That's who I'm still with, and I'm very, very, very lucky. But it doesn't happen that way for everyone. But you really can find a good match, and I'm really glad that you said what you said also about how when Claire retired, that it was a struggle for you. And I can only imagine mourning that the loss of that relationship and having to try to establish something with someone new who does not have that foundation and that core understanding of you and who you are, really building that from the ground up. And I think you deserve a lot of credit for trying a couple and realizing, okay, this isn't working out, but you have found a match. And, is it the same? No, but you're getting what you need. And, that's really great.
Yes. I read something that put it kind of in perspective. When you're seeking out a therapist, you are actually hiring them, which also means, this sounds harsh, but you can fire them. By fire them, I just mean, you can stop seeing them, seek someone else. But, I just hope that people, if they do have a bad experience or just simply don't feel like they can open up to a therapist, will not give up. We'll try to seek someone else. But it's your life and it's your decision. Instead of just keep seeing them on and not getting anything out of it.
Or, right. Yeah, continuing the sessions, throwing money away and having it not work, or leaving and going, well, therapy is clearly not for me. No, that therapist may not have been for you. But I have seen it where people kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater. They have a bad experience with a therapist and go, well, I knew this wasn't going to work. I knew therapy wasn't for me. Try again. And you're a wonderful model for that. That you had this wonderful decades-long relationship. It ended as all do, but you were able to pick up with someone else, and it's a very important reminder that you can do that, whatever the reason is for a therapeutic relationship ending.
Right. And therapy isn't for everybody, but it's such a shame that people do give up. And this is kind of a dramatic side of it, but the suicide rate, there are so many people who, because of the stigma, won't seek out help. And tragically, we see what happens so many times.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be. It really doesn't. So I'm just so grateful to you. And, particularly as a Caucasian male in your age bracket, that's the highest demographic for suicide. So you're really a model, not just for help seeking, but for also being open and vulnerable and putting yourself out there and telling your story. And I'm telling you right now, that helps people. It helps people to see you, in your author's photo, looking very dapper and debonair with your white hair, and being a male of that demographic, saying, combating stigma and saying there's nothing wrong with going to therapy, with taking meds, and telling your story. And I think you deserve a lot of credit.
Thanks, Gabe. I appreciate that. I really do.
It's the truth. And that's what I'm going to send you on your way with, Brian Marshall. I'm so, so grateful to you for being a part of our Recovery Diaries community, for coming to us not once, but twice, with 2 published essays on our site, and for being such a wonderful guest on the show. I'm so, so grateful to you.
Oh, I enjoy it. And thank you for what you do, for being such a great advocate for mental health.
Thank you. Wishing you all the very best.
Thank you.
Thank you again for joining us in conversation today. It's beautiful to see the progression of our contributors. What an absolute joy getting to spend some time with 2-time Recovery Diaries author Brian Marshall, award-winning journalist, career newspaperman in Texas and Michigan. Brian lives with bipolar disorder and depression, and we are so grateful to him for spending some time with us, and especially for his moving tribute to his longtime therapist, Claire Allen. Before we leave you, we want to remind you to check out our website, recoverydiaries.org. There, like this podcast, you'll find additional stories, videos, and content about mental health, empowerment, and change. We look forward to continuing to grow our community. Thank you so much for being a part of it. We wouldn't be here without you. Be sure to join our mailing list so you never miss a podcast episode, essay, or film. I'm Gabe Nathan. Until next time, take good care.